Hey guys, happy day 27 of Catechism in a Year. I am Anna, a lifelong Southern Baptist who is going through the Catholic Catechism along with my brothers and sisters who are also following along with Father Mike Schmidt's new podcast. Today is day 27, but I wanted to catch up on days 20 through 25. We're talking all about faith. Big topic, complex concept. I kept walking away from these episodes feeling like, okay, I've got it. Wait, what? And from the comments I was seeing on the Catechism in a Year Facebook group, I know I'm not alone. And I got to thinking, maybe faith is kind of like love. We can do our best to define it, but unless you're in it, unless you have already felt it, had the experience, a definition is probably not gonna 100% speak to you. Like, no definition of faith is gonna 100% get the job done. And I think maybe that's kind of what I was looking for here, was some sort of magic words to help me understand, but also that I could repeat to like an unbeliever to somehow make them understand precisely what faith is. But it's just a no-go. You gotta experience it to really know. And C.S. Lewis touches on this as he introduces the topic of faith in chapter 12 of Mere Christianity. He says, "If this chapter means nothing to you, if it seems to be trying to answer questions that you have never asked, just drop it. Do not bother about it at all. There are certain things in Christianity that can be understood from the outside before you have become a Christian, but there are a great many things that cannot be understood until after you have gone a certain distance along the Christian road. These things are purely practical, though they do not look as if they are. They are directions for dealing with particular crossroads and obstacles on the journey, and they do not make sense until a man has reached those places." Somehow, that helps me understand that this is a big concept. You sort of have to experience it to understand it, so I love that. I think what I'm trying to point out here, the essence of this is don't get bogged down. Don't be surprised that it takes example after example to build the parameters of what faith is. Don't be shocked that it takes so many words to describe this mysterious thing that happens to us. Don't get discouraged that our words just are not completely sufficient. I had to sort of shake off my need for a perfect understanding, which is something I have to do a lot. And I had to accept these descriptions of faith as I would accept descriptions of love as parameters and guides and hints and clues, because this phenomenon we experience as Christians, this phenomenon of just trust and love and obedience, like so many other things in Christianity, I don't think it's something we can fully express on paper. But on day 20, Father Mike paves the way for how we should think about what we're getting ready to hear over the next few days by asking these questions. Is faith something more than intellectual assent? Is faith something more than a feeling of trust? And yeah, later we find out that there's something called volitional faith, which Father Mike describes as much closer to saving faith. This is a faith that includes surrendering your intellect and your will, your thoughts and your choices to God because you believe Him. On day 20, we have these two sort of case studies, these amazing examples of faith in Abraham and Mary. And what we're looking at here is that their faith isn't described as a thought in their heads, as a feeling they had. It wasn't just intellectual faith, wasn't just emotional faith. Their faith is described as accepting God's word as true and then taking action because of that acceptance. This chapter or article, it's an article, it really dove into what it means to have personal faith, but it did not stop there. We learned that faith is supernatural, faith is personal, and it's also communal. We need God's initial gift of grace. We need His help to accept this gift. We need His help to act on our belief and to continue to do so. And we need the church's help at every turn. I'm going to play a clip from a video I shared earlier this week, a talk on what faith is by Tim Mackie at the Bible Project, because he was describing faith using the same scripture, referring to Hebrews and Abraham. And I could not sum up the concept of how our personal faith and the faith of the church work together and are absolutely necessary any better than he does here. And this really helped me retain what the Catechism had to say.
And so that act of, so maybe kind of a simple, this might be stupid, but a simple illustration. Is there a stool behind me right now? No. Nope. There's no stool behind me right now. So I sure hope you don't believe that there's a stool behind me. So, if I say, oh, yes, there really is a stool. Absolutely, there really is a stool. Am I having faith or am I stupid? I don't know why. If there's a reason to believe in the stool, I've never seen one. I've never heard about one. None of you can see one. But I really believe that there is one. Is that faith or is that stupid? That's stupid. Okay, now pretend you're not seeing me do this. All right? So pretend I didn't just do that. Okay, but now I can't see it. So, is there a stool behind me? Yes. Can I see it right now? No, I can't. Is there a good reason for me to think there's a stool behind me right now? What is that reason? Well, there's a whole bunch of you who can see it. Right? There's a whole bunch of these people who saw it. Now, how am I going to be guided to find where it is I'm going to land my faith? Well, I have a whole bunch of people here who can guide me. I actually have a whole bunch of people sitting in my church community who can guide me. Okay? So I'm trusting. Left? How am I doing? Hey, all right, there you go. All right. So there you go. So what just happened? Actually, a whole bunch of things just happened, right? So it began with reason, but it would just be entertaining a new idea if I didn't do something about it. It's not faith unless you do something about it. But I can't do something about it by myself. I rely upon the testimony of others. I rely upon the guidance of a community of faith to come around me and help me know where and how to do this following Jesus thing. And then there's a transfer of trust. A transfer of trust from my own self-sufficiency, thinking, I know how to navigate myself through this world, and there you go. And, in some degrees, I still can't see it. Right? But I have the experience of being empowered and elevated and carried by something that is not myself. Are you with me? Are you with me? Faith is the substance and the reality of the thing that you're hoping for. And it's not just pie in the sky. Have you ever acted in faith and experienced God's faithfulness that carries you in that act? You know exactly what this feels like. It's this right here. It's a transfer of trust. And there's very good reason for doing this. The crocus flower has blossomed. Jesus rose from the dead.
So this is sort of a silly example, like he says, but it hits a lot of the elements we've talked about. And I really like that the audience serves as the church, guiding him in his journey to the chair. But in this example, I think the experience of being held up by something that isn't himself, I think that represents the experience of faith. But he has to act in faith before he can get all the way there. It's a funny thing, he first has to have a feeling that there's something to believe in. That is, without a doubt, supernatural. That is a gift from God. He then has to step in faith toward the church that can help him find what he's looking for. And let's be honest, trusting an organization that human beings will consistently tell you not to trust, oftentimes with very legitimate reasons, that's supernatural too. The ability to see that the church contains God's truth, despite being run by human beings, that is a grace directly from God. We see in this silly example that he has to have enough faith to act in faith. It's a complex thing, and we shouldn't shy away from the fact that all of these elements are super intertwined. And I think accepting the fact that these things, the supernatural, the personal, the communal elements of faith, aren't really like steps in a process. Maybe they're more like characteristics of a relationship. I think that can help us understand what we're talking about a little bit better. He's relying on the witnesses who have already experienced what he hopes to experience. He's acting in faith that if he follows their guidance, the God who instructed them will help him get there. I'm pointing this out because one of the most important things about going to the church for guidance, going to your community, is that sometimes you'll be a part of the audience. Sometimes you'll be the one shouting what direction to go because you are comfortably seated and held up by something that isn't yourself. And other times, you will desperately need that audience. You will need direction because you've started leaning on your own ability again. The elements of faith, maybe they aren't like steps in a process. Maybe they're more like natures or roles in a relationship. You need all three. You need all three all of the time. This article in chapter 3 really helped me in realizing that. On that note, I want to say that I do have several things I want to address from this chapter as it relates to the difference in Protestantism versus Catholicism, and most specifically, what we mean when we say the church. Without a doubt, when the Catechism references the church, we are talking about the Catholic Church, so that is an obstacle for me. But this has already gotten a little bit long, so I'm just going to save that for another video and call this part 1. I hope this week spoke to you guys like it did to me. Don't get discouraged by the complexity of it. Hang in there, but let me know what it did mean to you in the comments. Y'all have a great weekend, and I will see you next time.